Hi there, this is Jess. Welcome to the first introductory session of Raspberry Live. This is the very first session in the story about a computer that fits in the palm of your hand that can think, make, and do. This is just an introduction to the Raspberry and a welcome to the Raspberry Pi neighborhood. Uh, Hopefully you have heard of the Raspberry Pi. If not, this should get you interested. It should show you why you might want a Raspberry Pi and some of the things that you can do with it. Those two questions kind of feed off each other because you may not know you want one until you see what you can do with it. So enough said about that. Let's go ahead and jump ahead to the beginning of the presentation. First, again, welcome to the Raspberry Pi. The newest version is currently the Pi 3 Model B. This is a quad-core processor, runs at 1.2 gigahertz, and has 1 gig of onboard DDR3 RAM. So for a Linux box, which is what this actually is, that's a lot of memory, and it's pretty fast. The main thing that I would give you this caveat: there is no hard drive. There's an SD card, a micro SD card slot, which I currently like to use either 16 gig or 32 gig SD cards, and I've not had any issues with space. I have tried a 128 gig SD card in there, which works fine. So that is your hard drive, and the DDR3 memory 1 gig is your RAM. So what comes in the box? Oh, I need to tell you one other thing. It does have built-in wireless, and it has built-in Bluetooth. So we'll go into some of the other features just a little bit later on, but I did want to kind of focus on those things. It uses an SD card in lieu of a hard drive, and it has 1 gig of RAM. It's a 1.2 gig processor. And so that being said, let's move ahead. So what's in the box? I've got some pictures that follow that show you basically what there is. And then we're going to talk about some things. We're going to talk about lighting this thing off. We're going to talk about you unpack the box, you put in the SD card, power it up, connect and log in, and start a remote service on the Raspberry with no keyboard, mouse, or monitor. You just use your own desktop to connect and to use the Raspberry PC. So that's pretty cool. Most of you have probably used remote desktop or VNC or something like that, but I have to say this is the operating characteristics are pretty fast, and it's really hard to believe that you're in a remote session. So I keep two of mine connected just about all the time, and I can jump back and forth all that I like without worrying about hooking up mice and keyboards and monitors and all that. So like I say, we're going to connect to that using a VNC connection, and we're going to take a look at the Raspbian Jessie desktop. No relation to this Jessie, that's the Raspbian Jessie. So we're going to demonstrate some of the amazing functionality of the Raspberry and give you some help to get you started. So let's take a look at what you might see or what you will see when you order one of these. The Raspberry itself is from Amazon, is about 35 bucks. The power supply is, you can get those for anywhere from 8 to 10 bucks according to what you want. I like to get the one that's got a little switch in here that you can turn it off and on instead of unplugging it. That's like an extra $1, but still under 10 bucks. So in the box, you're going to get the Raspberry Pi, the motherboard itself. You're going to get 2 heat sinks, which you can install just by taking the tape off and sticking them on the chips. And if you look, let's just walk around the board starting at the top. At the very top, underneath the card, is an SD card slot. That's where you plug in the SD card, which has all the operating system is on the SD card, and basically you can configure a new Raspberry just by making a new card. So you plug in that SD card right there. Coming on down the card, that first small plug is a standard micro USB. That's where you plug in the power from a power supply. Like I say, it's a standard plug, 5-volt DC. I recommend, as does the Raspberry community, that you use the 2.5 amp. That way you will never run out of juice when you're running other devices and peripherals hooked up to your Raspberry. Coming on down, you see the HDMI slot. That's a fully functional HDMI slot for connecting to a monitor or a TV set. The long black skinny thing there is a camera interface. They make a Pi camera for about 20 bucks that you can hook up to this if you like. And here is an audio output. You can hook up a headphone with microphone on this connection, and it can also serve the same purpose for headphones, microphone, as well as composite video if your TV doesn't have HDMI. So that's a pretty cool connection right there. Coming on down, you see, let's jump down here where we can see a better view. You have an Ethernet connection, and you have 4 USB 2.0. Sorry to say, the architecture of the ARM processor does not support, at least on this card, doesn't support 3.0. I'm not sure when it will, but right now these are all 2.0 USBs, and I've not had any issue with the USB slots, and I use all 4 of them on several applications. So these pictures should tell you exactly what's in the box. As I mentioned, you have the power supply as well. If you start adding up the cost, you're looking at 35 bucks, 10 bucks top, so 45 bucks to power one up. And for an SD card, you're going to pay anywhere from $8 to $15 based on who you buy it from and how big the card is. So just to kind of get ahead of ourselves, I will be glad to send you a pre-formatted card which will give you all of the operating systems and configurations that we've talked about. Some of the basic configurations that I include on my card is I have Raspbian Jessie, which is the desktop application, and includes all of the other software that's included with the desktop. And it also includes an Apache server, the VNC server, the camera system, SSH configuration, a few things like that. So there's not very many things you would have to do to have a fully functioning Pi without going through all the configuration stuff yourself. So jumping on ahead, I wanted to show you just what you would see on your desk when you unpack this. You can see the power supply, the Pi motherboard, and that little bitty SD card right there. So if you flip this thing over and plug it in, that's where the SD card fits. What you're looking at right here is a basic bare bones Raspberry Pi PC. You can hook up a USB mouse and keyboard and an HDMI monitor to it, but what I'm going to show you today to actually give you a better feeling of the power is just connecting to this bare bones system. So what we're going to do, we're going to first ensure that the Raspberry Pi SD card is inserted and the Pi is powered up. We're going to launch an application called PuTTY. I will have a link for you that you can download that yourself and log into the Raspberry at the command prompt, and we're going to ensure that the VNC service is running. We will do that from the PuTTY command window, and we're going to launch the VNC viewer on a remote desktop. Now, as I mentioned, I already have a VNC viewer, VNC service running. That's why I said ensure it's running, because it's part of my basic operating system. So then we're going to launch the viewer on my remote desktop, walk through some of the built-in features, and demo the Chrome browser, and kind of wrap this discussion up for today. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump out here to PuTTY. That's the application I mentioned that will actually help you to log in, and I'm going to enter the IP address. Now I'm going to have to give you some more information on how to figure out your IP address, but for now just assume you know what it is. You log in as user Pi, pretty simple, and there's a default password, which you'll want to change that because you don't want anyone logging into your system if you happen to have a port routed out through your router through port forwarding. So I'm going to check VNC server to see if it's running, and as I said, I'm sure it is, but if it's not, this would launch it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I can minimize this and get it off my desktop, and I'm going to launch VNC viewer. Now, as you will notice, I've already got a page set up, shortcut set up to this one, as well as most of them. But anyway, I'm going to jump over to that one, and I'm going to slide that screen over wherever it went. Pardon the delay. And I had an application open, which I really don't need open, so I'm going to minimize that for now. So this is the desktop. This is what the Raspberry Pi Raspbian Jessie desktop application looks like. You can pick many different screens if you like. It's kind of like Windows. Has a Windows look actually, but let's say you want to use something like Mountain. I like Mountain. That's a cool one. So there it is. It's black and white. At least it looks black and white because it's snow. Let's look at some Swedish territory here and see what it looks like. Oh, that's cool. Fjords of Sweden. So I'll leave that one up for now. We'd leave it there. So I wanted to show you some of the applications. So down in the bottom left corner is a Raspberry. You click on that thing and it pops up sort of like the Windows Start menu of old. But you'll see Programming, Office, Internet. So let's go to Programming really quick because there's two things in there I wanted to show you. Node-RED is a graphical programming tool. I literally love this. It's more of a configuration tool of all the different devices that you can connect to than it is programming tool. And Python is, most people have heard of Python. That's sort of the new language of choice for most people doing their programming. And it has a very good Python editor and the ability to launch your Python applications when you write those and to execute those. So Node-RED and Python are the two tools that I use most. Now there's also a program called Scratch, which is a graphical programming tool, but it's geared towards young people. So if you have any kids that you're going to show this to, you may want to try to show them the Scratch programming language. Very good examples of some of the programs that have been written by that are included with the Raspberry. So if you go on down to Office, you may have heard of LibreOffice. It's a Linux-based office system, very similar to Windows Office. It's got Microsoft, it's got, not Microsoft, it's got a Word, a Word package, it's got a PowerPoint, it's got Excel, I mean, you name it. Take a quick look at Calc and you will see that it looks almost like Excel. And I've tried pivot tables, I've tried VLOOKUPs, I've tried charts. I mean, I've done just about everything you can do on Excel, and I've not had any issues with that package. So the LibreOffice set of applications is pretty cool. Now, I mentioned for the internet application, it has Chrome. I think I mentioned that. If not, I meant to. It has a Chrome web browser. Now, if you log into this with your Gmail address, if you use Chrome with Gmail, with your Gmail address or your Google account, these will be in sync. So if I launch this web browser, it's actually pretty quick. It's about as quick as any of my desktops. It's certainly as quick as my Surface Pro 3. So there's not much difference there. I'm not logged in, so you don't see Jess up here because this is just a control application. I don't need that functionality. But if you were going to use this for an actual PC, you would probably go ahead and do that. So just for an example, let's just bring something up right quick, see what we get. All right, so that wasn't too slow. That was pretty good. It's a nice browser. Full functional browser, and so you can see how that works. Let's see if there was anything else I wanted to show you. Of course, you have command windows. You can do this the same thing that we were doing from the remote PC. And let's see what else I might want to show you. I think that's it for today. Of course, the file manager is just like any file manager. You know how to use that. It has search options and such. And if you look at the different preferences that you can set on your computer, they're here under preferences. Sound and video, I've got VLC media player loaded. You can put Kodi on here. You can do just about anything you can do with a PC. Under the shutdown, you can do shutdown, reboot, or log out. So I'm not going to do any of those right now, but I'm going to go ahead and get back to my desktop. And I thought I was going to get back to my desktop. There we go. And I will swap these things just so we can see where we were. And so just to kind of wrap up and summarize what we've done today, we have done a walkthrough of some of the built-in features and looked at the Chrome browser. And in our following sessions, we're going to look at a lot of things. We're going to look at some actual applications. I'm going to show you how to configure your out-of-the-box software if you don't want to buy a pre-formatted card. So a lot of things we can do there, and I will have with this, when I post this to Facebook, to the Raspberry site, I will post it with all the links to all the interesting things that you may want to purchase yourself, or you may want to look at some of the things on the web. The start button at the top of the Facebook page has a link to the raspberry.org site, so that would be a good place to start. All right, so I guess that's about it for today. Look for some other sessions. And as I said, we've got a lot of projects that we can talk about. Some of the ones just to kind of real quickly go through. Media Center, Apache Server, set up a NAS server, an intruder alert system, garage door opener, pool management system, weather station, and fritzing. If you don't know what fritzing is, I'm not going to try to explain it, but it sounds just, it's spelled just like it sounds. You may want to Google that because that's one of the coolest things for documenting application development that I've seen in a long time. So that's it for today. Appreciate everyone taking the time to watch. And again, welcome to the Raspberry Live community, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.